When Rivals launched in June 2024, it didn't just do well, it exploded. Within its first month it was pulling over 27,000 concurrent players, and after 6 months it was easily hitting over 100,000, making it the biggest title Nosny Games had ever released. But how did Rivals not only surpass their previous titles, but also become the most played Roblox shooter game of all time? Well, after digging into its rise, I found 4 key factors that explain its insane success, so let's break them down. To have a popular game you need a lot of players, obviously, but for every well-made game, the biggest limitation is something called TAG, or Target Audience Group. I think that's what it means anyway. Basically, out of everybody on Roblox, how many people actually want to play your game? For first-person shooters, that number is usually around 5 to 15,000 concurrent players based off previous games like Arsenal and Phantom Forces. Rivals looked at that, laughed, and demolished those numbers by making a game that was visually appealing, easy to play on all devices, and fine-tuned to optimize performance. Imagine a hypothetical 8-year-old playing on their iCheeto. They try Frontlines, a great first-person shooter, but it's dark, photorealistic, potentially laggy and difficult to play. They then load into Rivals, it's bright, smooth and gives the mobile players enough aim assist to wipe the floor with a PC player. No bonus points for guessing which game they will come back to. This sends all the right signals to Roblox. Kids on iPads and teens on PCs love Rivals, so Roblox boosts it to the front page. Boom, the player base explodes, easy dubs, Nosny is on his way to the bank. But not for long! Getting players is one thing, keeping them is another, but Nosny planned for that too. If you've played Rivals, which you probably have, you will know there are a ton of different game modes, but at its core they all boil down to attracting one of 2 groups. Competitive modes for tryhards, so grinding wins and in-game ranks, or casual modes for players who just want to have fun in free-for-all, team deathmatch or currently mirror matchup. Before Rivals, the sweats were dispersed between games like Phantom Forces, Frontlines, and a few other titles, while Arsenal pulled most of the casuals. Rivals then strolled into the scene, grabbed both audiences, plus it offered better graphics and a far better user experience. Oh, and there's no pay to win. Some people will argue otherwise, but realistically, a bacon hair with no Robux could hit the leaderboards if they have enough skill, which is a massive reason why so many people stick with Rivals. Now, before Rivals, Bed Wars was the PvP game on Roblox. For years, it dominated the competitive scene, and when Rivals dropped, that started to change. Now, was Rivals directly responsible for Bed Wars' downfall? It's unlikely, because the numbers show that Bed Wars was already declining before Rivals even launched, but Rivals definitely capitalised on it and put themselves in the optimal place for people to turn to. Think about it, players who have been grinding Bed Wars for over a year, they were probably getting bored. They wanted something fresh but still competitive, and that's exactly when Rivals appeared. Same bright colour schemes, same win streak system, skins, cases, toxic kids. Rivals had everything they wanted, but it wasn't just the same old formula. It felt new but familiar at the same time. The perfect replacements for players looking to move on. This kind of player migration from game to game isn't unique, it happens all the time in gaming. A big title starts to lose steam and a new game swoops in to consume its player base. The real question is, did Nosny and Sensei plan this? Well, Rivals took about 6 months to develop, which means work on the game likely started around the time that Bed Wars began declining, but was that strategic timing or just luck? There's no concrete proof that they saw the demand and made Rivals specifically to fill the gap, but the timing is interesting to say the least. And this movement of players wasn't just organic, it was boosted by things like YouTubers, many of whom transitioned their content to Rivals as well, but we'll talk about that more later in the video.
Today's video is brought to you by the subscribe button. Now it's time for a quick word from a very real subscriber.
Oh, I'm Scottish. I like haggis, rain and subscribing.
A big reason games fall off is simple. People get bored. And in shooter games, that problem is even worse because at the end of the day, most FPS games boil down to point and click, which can get repetitive very fast. But Rivals figured out a way to keep players hooked by always having something new on the horizon. Whether that's a new weapon, a fresh map, or an entirely new game mode, Rivals keeps players in a constant loop of excitement, either enjoying recently added content or waiting for the next big update, knowing it's not far away. If you compare Rivals' update cycle to other Roblox shooters like Arsenal or Frontlines, the difference is night and day. I recently made a short predicting when the Rivals ranked update would drop, and during the process of making that, I realised something. Rivals updates at least once a month, often more. And these aren't just small bug fixes, every update brings something new, giving players a reason to keep playing. This matters a lot because people don't just want to invest time and money into a game that feels like it's dying or is already dead. A perfect example of this is Islands, one of the biggest Roblox games back over lockdown. It was huge and honestly, one of my favourite games ever on the platform. But the moment the devs announced that they were done updating it, the player base collapsed and never recovered. Rivals avoids that fate by making it crystal clear that Nosti and Sensei are fully committed to the game. Even if players start feeling a little burnt out, they stick around knowing that their keys and progress and the grind will actually mean something when the next update drops. Obviously this is no groundbreaking strategy, every game benefits from updates, but Rivals executes it differently. Most games tease the updates vaguely, but Rivals, they will tell you exactly what's coming up. You're not just hoping for new content, you have concrete proof that your time and efforts are being invested in a game with a future. YouTube is the biggest social media platform, and for any game, it's basically free advertising. The biggest creators pull millions of views, and Rivals launched at the perfect time. Right as Bed Wars was losing steam and Blade Bowl was getting backlash, and YouTubers were desperate for new, interesting content. I mentioned this earlier, but a ton of creators migrated to Rivals when it dropped. Off the top of my head, Tanker and Minibloxia came from Bed Wars, while VHD, I don't know how to say his name, sorry, made the jump from Blade Ball, and they weren't alone either. These were just examples off the top of my head. Point is, loads of creators did this, each introducing Rivals to their own audiences. But it didn't stop there, no, new creators saw the demand and jumped in to build their channels around Rivals, like my boy Apfelino, who started his entire career on this game. Rivals content exploded across social media, bringing in more players. This became a feedback loop. The more people played, the more views the videos got, the more players Rivals gained, and so on. Now, you might think this is just a natural byproduct of having a popular game, but no, the Rivals devs actively encouraged it. They rewarded top creators with exclusive in-game charms and items, collaborated with them to feature in videos, and generally showed that they valued their community. And let me tell you, making creators feel valued is the single best way to keep them making content. Free advertising never hurts, but when devs actually acknowledge and reward the people pushing their game, well, that's when a game will really take off. It's easy to look at how popular Rivals is today and just assume that it's because it's a fun game, but there is so much more going on under the hood, and I hope you found it interesting to hear about that. If you want to watch me do a similar thing, in this video I break down exactly what makes Tanker so good at Roblox Rivals. Thank you very much for watching, and bon voyage, my old cream crackers.